Hey everybody, it's Dr. Eric Balcavage. We're back for another edition of Thyroid Thursday, and today we're going to answer a question I get asked quite a bit from people on discovery calls, and that is, will they always need thyroid hormone replacement? The question comes up because people go to their primary care physician or their endocrinologist, and they're told that they're going to need their thyroid glands damaged, they're going to need to be on thyroid medication, they're probably going to be on it the rest of their life. And they may hear people like me or other people say that the thyroid gland might be recoverable. Probably in the last 2 weeks, I've had probably 3 people that they were now coming off of thyroid medication after years of taking thyroid medication, and somewhere between maybe 8 months and a year and a half of working together to get them to initially a more appropriate dose, and then as we started to address what was creating the thyroiditis and address those things, they were able to reduce the dose, and reduce the dose. And if somebody's able to continually reduce the dose and then get off of the dose, what does that mean? That means there's less destruction of the gland and the gland is able to recover, okay? So can somebody recover the gland? Well, it's really based on the individual. What was done to the gland? How long has it been that their gland has been atrophied? Have they addressed what's creating the issue? So it really does become based on the individual. It's also based on the doctor that's helping you. If you're working with somebody who's just prescribing thyroid medication, and they're driving TSH too low, and there's no need to stimulate the thyroid gland for it to recover, then no, you shouldn't expect to come off of thyroid medication. Matter of fact, this is my beef with a lot of people in functional medicine who say they're optimizing somebody's thyroid physiology by flooding T4 and T3 into the system, or just T4 or just T3, to try and maximize, or what they call optimize, the blood levels of T3. And for some reason, they think that if they give a person an amount of T4 or T3, or a combination of those two things, and they feel better temporarily, that they've optimized the person. And I don't think that's the case in most situations. Could you feel better getting some prescription thyroid medication, both T4 and T3? Sure. Oftentimes what you see is somebody gets the initial load of medication, they have their honeymoon period, and then they don't feel as good, and now they're looking for a little bit more, a little bit less. They're trying to tinker with the dose. Do I need to add T3? Do I need to decrease T3? Do I need to add T4? Do I need to decrease T4? Do I need to go from a synthetic to a glandular? And all of this stuff kind of gets thrown into the mix. And anytime somebody's really struggling with what's the magical, mystical dose and what's the right combination, that's where I think their physician and maybe the client is missing the point. If it takes that much effort and work to try and optimize how you feel and it only lasts temporarily, then you haven't optimized anybody at all. There is a reason that there is reduced conversion of T4 to T3, and there's less T3 at the cells and tissues, which results in signs and symptoms. There's a reason there's thyroiditis that's creating damage to the gland. And just because you replace the body with the amount of thyroid hormone that maybe it would have made naturally, or much more than it may have made naturally, doesn't mean you've optimized anyone. So there is a meta-analysis that came out that looked at lots of literature, lots of research on people who have been prescribed medications between 2008 and 2018. And what they found is that maybe up to 90% of the people who were placed on thyroid hormone replacement medications were done so likely inappropriately, and many times way too early. So how do you get a thyroid gland to recover? This is the strategy I tried to utilize. Well, we want to make sure, this is a primary thing right off the bat, we don't want somebody over-medicated. We don't want to drive their TSH too low. We want their TSH to be a little bit higher to stimulate and support and drive the gland to start to work again. If you're suppressing TSH too low, maybe below 2, it really depends on the individual, you may not ever get a chance for your thyroid gland to recover. So the goal is not to suppress TSH. We need to identify what will what caused the decreased conversion into thyroiditis in the first place. If you're not addressing what may have driven this process in the first place, how can you ever expect the thyroid gland to recover? How can you ever expect to have normal T4 to T3 conversion? So is it toxins? Is it trauma? Is it thought? Is it organisms? Is it oxygen? Is it food? Is it habits? Is it environmental toxins? Lots of things have to be considered as to what's creating the stress response. Once we identify these factors, we need to decrease that load, start reducing or eliminating the things that are contributing to an excessive stress load. And then we can support the shift from this danger physiology to a healing and repair physiology. There's no way your body's going to heal and repair if it's perceiving threat and danger. And then we need to continuously monitor the thyroid panel and tissue markers to find out when the dose we thought was appropriate at the start is now no longer appropriate, because as we reduce the stressors, now we're going to start to see that the dose that was appropriate maybe at the start of care is too much. And we're going to start to see a reduction in symptom improvement. We may actually see a regression. We may see weight gain. We may see some of the hypo and hyperthyroid symptoms start to pop back up again. So we have to constantly be monitoring the thyroid panel and tissue markers of thyroid status. And then number 6, we can't be afraid of as TSH goes up. Oftentimes, when I'm recommending dropping a dose to a clinician, and then 30 days later, we're re-looking at the thyroid panel and some tissue markers, the prescribing doc is panicked when they see a TSH go from 0.86 to 6.45. Like, we need to put them on more. And that's when I have to have them pause for a second. I'm like, let's take a look at the lab values. Let's take a look at where T4 is. It's normal. Let's take a look at free T4. It's normal. Let's take a look at T3. It's actually better than it was on the higher dose. Free T3 is better than it was on the higher dose. And things like reverse T3 are they may be actually higher, not because there's more inflammatory process, but because there's just too much medication. And so we can also look at that free T3 to free T4 ratio. So it's not as simple as what's the lab reference range, what's that lab, like the optimal range. This is all about interpretation. So if you're a person who's wondering, can your thyroid gland can recover? Are you somebody who could potentially maybe not need thyroid medication? The answer is maybe, but you need to work with a functional medicine practitioner who understands these principles if you're gonna have some success reducing or eliminating thyroid medication, all right? And getting your health back. If you have any questions, put them below wherever you watch this video, all right? Take care.